Hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us. Good stuff to talk about again today. The post office deciding it's going to discontinue Saturday mail delivery. Is this the first cutback with more on the horizon? We'll see. Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark can't seem to stay out of the news. The latest controversy is his somewhat secret pursuit of a master's degree out in California. And we'll talk about fired Milwaukee County Parks Director Sue Black resurfacing as the new CEO of the Milwaukee Wave soccer team. All right, let me introduce everybody. Longtime columnist for the newspapers, Joel McNally. Kevin Fisher, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, and oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. Denise Calloway, community affairs and public relations professional. And Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about, the U.S. Postal Service announcing that it's going to discontinue Saturday mail delivery. With so many people now communicating by email, paying their bills online, business sure isn't like it used to be for the post office. Do you see the mail carrier going the way of the milkman, soon to be a thing of the past, Kevin?
Oh, I don't think so, but it's obviously not like it used to be where the post office was the only game in town. And because the post office either couldn't or wouldn't or both try to compete with their competitors, it was inevitable that this was going to happen. I understand the rationale behind cutting Saturday deliveries. That doesn't mean I have to like it. I think we're going to miss it more than we think. The immediate reaction is, well, that's one less day of junk mail that I'm going to get. I won't miss it. But a lot of people will be affected. There are still people who pay their bills not online, but through the post office. So if you pay your credit card bill that way, you will have 2 less days of the bill coming to your house, and then you'll have 2 less days to actually meet the due date. I think it will affect DVD rentals and some other things as well. But they're going to have to do more, I think. $2 billion is a lot. They could have saved $7 billion if they would reform their pension and benefit schedules, and that might be the next step. But their refusal to sell stamps other than in their own buildings. I mean, you know, sell them in pick and saves and sell them in Sendix, but they refuse to do so. Their stamp market is doing well. There's talk that they have too much space. I don't know what that means, but
post office. Yeah, that's what it means.
But I go in and I don't see that they have these sprawling buildings, but they're thinking of selling off some of their real estate to cut their losses. So I think there still are some changes down the road that we're going to see.
Is it still a major part of the American scene that we need it forever?
Well, I mean, there's some things you can only get via the mail or through some other type of delivery source. You can only get a package that's going to come to you through the mail or through UPS, FedEx, or one of those other vendors. I think it is part of our culture that people, except for those days when you get a lot of junk mail, do look forward to getting things in the mail. For some people, it's still the main way to communicate. If we take a look at particularly the fourth quarter giving season, those solicitations that we get, in many cases for organizations that we want to support, still come through the mail. So I do think it still plays a vital role. It's a changed role. And the reason that the post office is now looking at the $2 billion they saved here, but the problem is they had a $20 billion deficit. So this $2 billion compared to the huge ballooning cost that they have is only a drop in the bucket. They didn't change when there was an ability to do so. And so now they're really trying to play catch up. I think this is probably just the first of several things they're going to do. They have to make the painful decision, and it's really tough because congressmen don't want post offices in their districts to close, but they're going to have to close some of those post offices. They're going to have to do some downsizing of staff. These are all things that they're going to have to do if they're going to be able to survive. And the other thing we've got to do is there's this odd quasi-governmental relationship that the post office has. Either it's going to be an independent body or the government's going to support it. The situation that they're in now, where it's neither fish nor fowl, I think has caused some of the problems they have.
Would it make sense to have the post office go totally private?
No, because the obligation still hangs out there, and unless the government does what it did with the auto workers and kind of spins that pension system off into a separate organization that then becomes responsible for those obligations, I don't see that as being realistic. But it's going to have to be addressed, and the federal government is going to have to address it because those obligations were incurred while those employees were federal employees. So it's whether they were quasi-governmental or totally governmental. Keep in mind, too, that the fix came in at a time when email and texting wasn't a part of our culture to the degree that it is today. And so they were slow. You know, the government takes its time when it thinks it has a corner on the market. And this was one clear instance where they weren't thinking long-term about the possibilities of electronic mail overtaking what's now become characterized as snail mail. The other piece, I get flack from my relatives, most of whom work for the post office. Fortunately, they're not in this town. When I mention they will have to address the real estate issue. Denise was on target in talking about unloading some of these facilities. And in this community, unfortunately, all of the facilities that they were talking about unloading were in the African-American community. And there's a different kind of purpose that they have, not just for mail sorting and delivery, but there are a lot of folk who use the post office to pick up their mail. It's where they have their mail.
Or even money orders.
Or money orders.
Is the post office, I don't know, is the post office sitting on a sprawling gold mine of real estate? I don't think enough to solve their fiscal woes, though.
No,
well,
but
it's ongoing obligations that they need to unload, and if you're going to downsize staff, which they can do a good chunk of the downsizing, well, it can happen through attrition. It can happen through early payouts. They did that about 15, 20 years ago. So there are ways in which they can downsize staff. They can manage that, but they can't downsize staff if they have to continue to staff buildings they don't need.
And I could support that idea. I would like to hear a definitive number of how much the savings would be.
The legacy costs are hurting this organization too. Is it fair to blame the history of strong union workers getting good pension benefits?
Never.
No?
Never. What are you talking about? They earned it. It was part of the deal. You know, you just can't take those things away from them. As Kevin just suggested, there might be some way to sneak around and do that.
Well, it's on the discussion table.
Of course it is, and there always is. You know, if there's a way to attack unions, it'll always be on the discussion table.
By the way, my father worked 31 years for the post office.
But in the long range, I mean, we need a whole, big picture vision of where the post office really fits these days. Gerard pointed out, some services that not everyone thinks about that serve some communities and not other communities. But certainly the whole real estate question, the way the real estate is set up now, doesn't necessarily make sense. We have banks moving into grocery stores. There isn't any reason why it wouldn't be more convenient to have post offices moving into grocery stores in somebody else's real estate.
They refuse to do so.
Instead of all that. Let me tell you, people want to protect whatever they've got, and you can't blame them. But where this whole service fits in American society, I can't remember, truthfully, the last important thing I got in the mail. I pay my bills, online. I receive money from what used to be the check was in the mail. Now I receive the checks online as well. And truthfully, it just does not serve the purpose that it once did. And when I hear these congressmen say, well, the elderly will suffer, and these post offices are really important for small towns, and there's lots of things that we have been important in our past, but where it fits in our future is a whole different question.
All right, now let's talk for a few minutes about Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark. In the news once again after Channel 12 reports that he's been going back and forth to California to work on a master's degree in Homeland Security. he tried to keep it a secret. He blasts Channel 12 and the media for its reports, saying it should portray him as a role model for young black men and not a ne'er-do-well. What do you think?
You know, I always want law enforcement to be well-trained, well-prepared. So I don't have a problem with his getting an additional degree. It's through, if I'm not mistaken, it's sponsored by Homeland Security. It makes sense on that score. Now, I think where people have the problem is who's paying for it and whether or not the time that he's away is time that could be best spent in this community managing the department. He's a good administrator, in my view. And so I think he's got that piece covered with regards to how the department is managed while he's been away. The other piece, though, the cost, if the cost to attend is available as would any other educational costs being reimbursed to other deputies, if that's available to them, then I don't know why it wouldn't be available to him.
Denise, do you have a problem with him leaving town to go work on a degree?
Well, I don't think we know enough about this degree or this program to make that decision about whether or not there's an issue or a problem with it, and that's part of the problem. Here we have a guy who I think we would all attest to here loves the media spotlight. He's going to this very prestigious institution to earn his master's degree. I can't believe we haven't seen at least 3 news releases on it, because it is quite a feather in his cap to be able to do that. There's no doubt about this. This is something that a handful of people from around the country are chosen to do. I think we do have some questions, and I think the media, both Channel 12 and the Journal-Sentinel, requested information about his travel because they had wanted to ask be able to answer that same question. Is there a problem with this because he's not spending enough time here in Milwaukee? Who's paying for his travel back and forth? Is that something he's paying for solely? I just think that as a public servant, it is absolutely incredible that he wants to do things to further his understanding of law enforcement and make this community safer. I think that's great. But I also think as a public servant, particularly somebody whose job requires them to be on the job 24/7, it's also fair to this community for people to have an understanding of what you're doing and where you're doing it. Because if we take a look at 2 of the biggest things that have happened in this community, the unfortunate death of the sheriff's deputy on the highway and the Oak Creek temple shooting. He wasn't around for either one of those. So I think it's right for us to ask these questions. And I think as a public servant, he deserves to give us those answers.
But at the same time, you really don't want to broadcast, if you're the sheriff or law enforcement official or anybody, that you're going to be out of town this weekend and this weekend and this weekend, do you?
I don't think he had to do that. What made this a story was the sheriff's kind of bizarre, paranoid behavior. I actually believe it's a good program to be involved with. Good to have law enforcement people get the more education, the better. And actually, because you know some of my feelings towards, I wouldn't call him a good administrator. When he's here, he's mostly firing or disciplining his own employees. I wouldn't call him a good administrator of that department. In a lot of ways, I think the more time he's away, the better. But the truth of the matter is, people have known for months that he was getting a degree somewhere, but he wouldn't tell them where. And as a matter of fact, it was when he appeared on CNN debating Mayor Barrett over his silly gun statement. He actually lied to the Journal-Sentinel about where he was and what he was doing. He said he was in Monterey, California at a conference instead of admitting, what in the world was so secret, and why did he feel he had to keep this secret from everybody? From what I understand, Homeland Security is paying most of the cost for everything. And it was his secretiveness. And then when people found out where he was, and that's what made it news, because he was trying to keep it secret what he was doing, he actually, told Channel 12, first of all, he attacked Channel 12 for reporting the news, and he's the one who made it news. And then he said he would only go on the air to talk about it if they would give him 5 to 6 minutes of unedited airtime, which no legitimate news organization in the world would grant any public official.
That's half their news block.
Yeah, it was his bizarre, strange behavior that made this a story. I don't know if he just didn't want us to know that he might well seek another job after he completes this training. I have no idea what was behind his own strange behavior.
Kevin, is he totally the bad guy in this?
Absolutely not. Well, he's the bad guy if you're the left. The left doesn't like him.
I just said he
We
should
didn't
get
say he was doing
The left
anything wrong. For crying out loud.
him. Doesn't like him. They've proven it on this program.
Kevin.
Denise doesn't like him. Joel doesn't
I never said I didn't like him. Don't put words in my
Rick
mouth.
Horowitz
Keep the words
ridiculed
in
him
your
last
own
week.
mouth.
He doesn't like him.
I
They
would say I don't
They
like
don't like him because he's a minority who's not liberal, and they can't
Kevin,
fathom how somebody
you need
can.
to
They
speak
can't
truth
fathom
and not the way
how
that you
some non-white
try to
person
say things.
can be a
That's absolutely
conservative.
incorrect, and you know that.
Okay, now if I could talk. All
Well,
right.
if you speak the truth, I have no
Well,
problem.
it is the truth. You guys don't like him.
It's not. Don't say I
Rick
don't like
Horowitz
him.
don't like
Don't
him.
say I don't like him, and don't say I
You
don't
don't
like him
respect
because
him.
he's a minority
He
person.
just called him all kinds of
Don't say
names.
I do not like this man because
I
he is a
think you don't
minority.
like him.
Who's
You're
that's
always
not true.
critical of him.
That's not true.
Now-
I'm always critical of you, but that doesn't mean I don't like you,
Is
Kevin.
he the bad guy? He's been the punching bag of the left over a non-story. This is the second week in a row on this program. We are talking about a big, fat non-story. A guy goes out to get a master's degree is suddenly front page news. And let's get this straight. When he grandstands, he's wrong for grandstanding. That's all he wants to do is be this big egotistical guy in the news. And then when he tries to be humble and keep this impressive, rather cool endeavor quiet, he's wrong for that. For heaven's sakes, there's all kinds of stuff we could be talking about tonight. Benghazi, the federal budget,
Republicans can't think to talk
joblessness.
about.
We could be talking about all these things. We're talking about a guy that the liberals don't like is going out to better himself and his career in an area that he does have expertise in and that he does want to expand his knowledge. And we're criticizing him for wanting to get a master's degree. I got to tell you, Channel 12, if there's those people sitting around in that newsroom that thought that this was a Peabody Award-winning effort, they're crazy. This is hack journalism. It didn't deserve to go on the air.
Kevin, I cannot let what you said earlier go unanswered without Joel and I being able to say one thing absolutely clear. Neither one of us, I didn't laugh at him.
Yeah, you did.
No, I did not.
Absolutely.
No, I did not.
You laughed during Rick Horowitz's screed against him. You and Joel sat there and laughed your heads off.
I was laughing at Rick's humor. So as long as we're clarifying what things are said, neither Joel nor I have said that we do not like this man. And certainly, I really take offense, Kevin, to the fact that you characterize the fact that we don't like him because he's a minority who's a conservative. I've never said that. And that is absolutely false to say that.
You don't have to say it,
absolutely
Denise.
false. Kevin, don't put words in my mouth. Just worry about the ones coming out of your own.
I can back up what I say.
Neither
truthfully,
of us said that he shouldn't be getting this education. And as a matter of fact, I think it's a good thing. I think his behavior is absolutely paranoid and bizarre, however.
All right.
But you like the guy.
Let's talk for a few minutes
Okay.
about Sue Black. She's the very popular former Milwaukee County Parks Director who was fired a few months ago by County Executive Chris Abele. No public explanation was ever given as to why she was let go. It was announced this week that she'll be the new CEO of the Milwaukee Wave indoor soccer team. Many people are saying, wow, that's an odd match.
I don't think so. Sue Black's an impresario. She's a promoter. Some people say that she's too much of a self-promoter, but she can actually utilize her talents, her connections, resources that only she has the ability to connect to bring to bear for the Wave. And I do think that it was a good move on the Wave's part and a good move on her part as well. The community will benefit because she clearly loves Milwaukee. And she likes Milwaukee institutions. She knows how to promote those institutions that, frankly, we underappreciate. There had been a long stretch where this community underappreciated the parks, and she brought some freshness to the perspective that the parks are an important part of the culture of this community. So hopefully she can do the same thing with the Wave. If the owner, who's a relatively new owner, if he can put the resources in to assist in that promotion, because not all of it's going to come for free, and allow her to make some of those connections to young people. I mean, they must have had the place nearly filled with young people at the time that the announcement was made that she'd be coming on as CEO. If those kinds of connects can be made, I think she'll be hailed as one of the best moves this community has made to bring in some new blood into the sports world.
Is she a placeholder? Is it a short-time job, you think, until something that she really wants opens up?
I don't know. I mean, there are people who are certainly seeking her out because of her parks experience. I think that would be another possibility if another major job running a park system opens up. But I actually have to tell the truth. Decades ago, I made probably the most foolish bet in my life that by this point in our lives, soccer would be almost as big as football in this country. It hasn't quite happened. We've got a ways to go yet. But everybody's children play soccer,
right?
And
then they
they
grow up.
have,
Then
and
they
they
grow
have
up
for
and suddenly
decades.
soccer isn't so
They
cool
have for
anymore.
decades, and in every other country in the world practically, soccer is the major football sport.
Except here.
And exactly, but I don't see any reason why it shouldn't continue to grow, and that she is, as Gerard said, a good promoter, a good person that can also bring in corporate sponsors, but also connect with young people and draw more people in. So I think I wish her all the best.
It's a second-tier sport in Milwaukee. It's not the Brewers, it's not the Bucks, it's not the Packers. It's more like, you have the Wave and the Admirals on
I
the
wouldn't
second
use
tier.
the Wave and the Packers in the same sentence.
I know, no, because you have the Wave and the Admirals.
Unless you're doing the
on
Wave had
on
the
next
game.
level. Is her hiring an effort to bump the Wave up?
They have a following. It's a loyal following, but it's a small following. I think there's only so high a sport like the Milwaukee Wave, a
And
team,
they're not in a major league.
right, can go. She was not brought in here to make them a winning team because
They are.
they already are, and I'm not sure about her complete knowledge about the sport to begin with. She wasn't brought in to put fannies in the seats. She was brought in to raise money, something that she's proven that she could do. And this is a business. Granted, it's not the Brewers or the Packers, but it still is a business that is in business to make a profit. And I think that's the number one reason she was brought in, to help that team make money. And she does want to, and I think she can, based on her ability, increase the profile of the team.
30
She
seconds.
says
I think-
that there are players with stories to tell, and she'll help them tell it.
Will it work?
20 seconds now. I think it has the great potential to work. I mean, what Sue Black is able to do so well is to bring attention to and then bring resources to the parks and other organizations that are in need. So I think it's a smart move on the part of the Wave management. I think it's also great because, here she's really a treasure. She's somebody in this town who sees a problem, figures out a way to solve it, and to keep that kind of resource in our community, I think is a good thing for us.
Okay. Well, there's still plenty of conversation going on in the wake of the Sandy Hook shootings and the other shootings, large and small, that have happened since then. Rick Horowitz finds himself still focused on one recent congressional conversation, but let him tell you in his own way. Rick.
The college I went to was way too small to have a football team, also way too feeble. What we had instead was intramural football, flag football. One advantage, a lot more of us undersized types got to play. The other advantage, plenty of great team names, including my favorite team name of all time in any sport, the entire Polish Army. I mean, just imagine coming back to your dorm all sweaty and mud-caked and telling your roommate you just defeated the entire Polish Army. Or even if you'd lost, that you'd given your all against the entire Polish Army. Pretty terrific, right? Anyway, I've been thinking about the entire Polish Army recently because I've been listening to Lindsey Graham talk about guns. And no, Lindsey Graham isn't Polish, at least I don't think he is. What he is a very smart, very sharp Republican senator from South Carolina. He's got one of the best minds on Capitol Hill, in my opinion. And that's not a punchline, I mean it. The man knows how to think, how to develop a line of argument. I'm always intrigued by what Lindsey Graham has to say. The other day, he was taking part in a committee hearing on gun violence and possible limits on certain types of weapons and high-capacity magazines. He was talking about a woman in Georgia, a mother of twins, who'd used a gun, a 6-shot revolver, to ward off an attack on her home by an intruder with a crowbar. A gun, by the way, that wouldn't be banned by any of the new gun safety proposals being debated, but let that slide for now. Sure, Lindsey Graham conceded this particular woman had been able to defend herself with limited ammunition, but what if she had needed more? What if it hadn't been one intruder, but two? There can be a situation, he argued, where a mother runs out of bullets because of something we do here. In some circumstances, he said, the 15-round magazine makes perfect sense. And in some circumstances, the AR-15 makes perfect sense. And I sat there thinking, yeah, and what if it was 3 intruders, or 5, or 8? Does a machine gun make sense? How about 17? Does a rocket launcher make sense? An attack helicopter? What if it's a battalion? What if it's the entire Polish army? There can be a situation in some circumstances. You can't make policy that way. Let me correct that. You can't make intelligent policy that way.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Stay warm. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.